You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
But again, in the beginning, you really don't know how much sacrificing, grind, and grit you need to be successful. And the one thing we say to every kid or every coach is the reflection aspect of the app is the thing that you do every single day. You get to follow what they're doing. I think that's something that you really wouldn't have access to without the ATAC apps. So Jordan Burroughs is one of the part owners in ATAC as well. If anyone's interested in becoming an owner of ATAC, the opportunity for limited time is available. We're raising capital on a platform called Start Engine right now. Tech companies are hard to start, they're hard to grow, and it allows anyone who's interested in investing to come on and invest. You're officially an owner of ATAC, and you can be a part of the family legit.
Everyone who won dropped down 20 push-ups, and they're like, well, we won. I'm like, yeah. So the guy who lost has to sit there and watch you get better.
This is Bryan Heller, and you're listening to Airey Brothers Radio.
All right. Listen, my first year, I think we were 0-17, so it took me a while to get one. So you strapped up right away.
Yeah. Dang, man. Yeah. Good on you for coming back, bro. I would have had a midlife crisis at that point.
No, I signed up for that. You know what I mean? It was about the rebuild. It wasn't about showing up and taking over someone else's hard work.
Was it hard on you to do that, just knowing what you came from at Penn State and kind of that mind state, and then you're going back to Class B South or whatever it is?
No, man, it was cool. I love it. You know, it's funny. There's a lot of coaches that coach for a lot of different reasons, but I've said it a lot of times. I really just loved working with the kids and trying to build them into the best wrestlers humanly possible. So you kind of take that with like a humble, and there was time, don't get me wrong. There was a gap between leaving Penn State and starting at Rumson, right? So I coached you, I coached a bunch of other people during that time. So you kind of go through ebbs and flows of how you're feeling about being a coach. But when I took that role, it was 100% just like, all right, I know this program could be something. It's nothing right now. They're working real hard, but they're having trouble getting their hands raised individually and then as a team. So I was just fully committed. Like, all right, what can we do, and how much impact can I have on these kids? And I think I probably, if I had to guess, I really don't even know, but if I had to guess, when I stopped coaching there, my 8-year record was probably a losing record. If I had to guess, we could fact check that, but I'm guessing it was losing. But that's not why I did it. I didn't want to have a winning coaching record. I didn't want to, it wasn't about the accolades for me. It was like, how many kids can we place in the States? I'm super proud to say, and I say it all the time when people ask me about coaching, that I have 6 kids wrestling D1 right now. So that's a stat that those kids came through our program and were prepared to wrestle at the highest level. And that's what I like to look back on and see, like, those kids did really, really well. And we were in, Central Jersey Group 2 state finals, sectional finals once, which was fun. First time in school history, and putting a lot of kids at the podium in AC, all that stuff, super fun. But ultimately, they get to wrestle at the next level, and I'm completely out of it, but they're fulfilling their dreams, which is the best for sure. Rich, how many, I know we were talking about this a little bit. How big's your roster down there?
36 right now.
36 strong. How many would you start with on day one?
We've probably been over 40. We haven't lost too many kids, to be perfectly honest. Like, there's been a couple kids that have come in for a day and disappeared, but like the kids that keep coming back, they keep coming back. Like, I haven't broken anyone to the point where, other than like the first day kids, that it's not for them, but everyone that's out they're having fun. And same thing, dude. I want to win, but I want to develop proper human beings. And if we become great wrestlers along the way, then that's just gravy, And so they're buying into what we got, and there's definitely going to be some growing pains because some of them are just not used to accountability and like getting in contact and seeing me face to face. If you're not going to be at practice, like, you need to explain to me why you're not coming, and knowing that what's excused and what's not excused. And I've found, and it seems to be working, that like physical punishment doesn't really do anything. So what I do is I've linked up with the custodians after school, and if you get in trouble, you get a detention, you have an in-school suspension, you miss practice, you're going to clean toilets for an hour with the janitors before you could start practice. So we had
That's
we had an incident
that's
where
awesome.
Some middle school kids left practice and they were supposed to leave and go home, and they went into the auditorium and they messed with some of the play props for the students' play, and then they went into the sound booth and they stole some of the kids, high school kids' equipment, and they ended up getting out of school suspension for 2 days. But ended up being like $85 worth of damage. So minimum wage down here is probably about $7.50. So each one of them had to work off $80 worth of community service with the janitors until they could come back into the practice room.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I know that's when I was asking the question. I know you're working them hard, and I know you're preaching accountability and all that stuff. So the fact that you keep them around with all that adjustment, that's like the ultimate testament for a coach, right? How can you motivate kids to do what they don't want to do and not resent you for it? It's such a hard balance, and that's like what you just said there was critical too. Not punishing with hard work, right? Like in my mind, hard work is a reward, or it's how you become great at something. So if from a mental standpoint, you look at sprints and push-ups as the enemy, when really that's what you need to get to the next level, you have a skewed perspective. Like you should want to do push-ups because you want to win. You should want to do sprints because you want to have a gas tank, not because, well, coach is punishing us, so we have to do sprints right now. This sucks. Like, and then we all grew up like that. I mean, it's like, this is kind of a out there concept that I'm rolling with. But when we would do goes like 2-minute go or foot toe tag, or there's a leg grab game or whatever game we play in the practice room, we'd say, okay, everyone who won, put your hand in the air. And up and say, all right, everyone who won, drop down 20 push-ups. And they're like, well, we won. I'm like, yeah. So the guy who lost has to sit there and watch you get better while you have a chance to get better. And all the kids are like, oh, I'm going to do them too. I'm like, nah, you lost. You got to sit there and watch. You don't get to participate. And then they go super hard. Like the way that they grind to be able to do push-ups is comical. And it's funny to see the turnaround, where like I was doing a private lesson with the kids. So I only do privates now. And this kid is a sophomore, 106 pounder, so a little guy. And he was like saying he was running out of gas. So I'm like, all right, we did a pretty good go. And then we're going to do some sprints, like some back and forth relays. And he won the first one. And I won the first one. And I was like, all right, I'm doing push-ups. He's like, that sucks for you. And I'm like, yeah, no, it sucks for you. You have to watch me get tougher. And he was like, I'm going to do them. And I'm like, nah, you got to beat me now. And then he went so much harder to win to be able to do push-ups. And you're like, this is the best thing ever. These kids like they're craving the hard work now because they understand. Like it's from a mental perspective, you got to flip the book on them a little bit.
Yeah, and then additionally to that, what I do is I pair the winners with the winners and the losers go with the losers. So then that gives the losers the opportunity to win, and then it makes the winners, they've got a harder match. So
yeah,
it's fun.
Elevate the room.
Some days are frustrating, but I walked away from Saturday's tournament with we got pollywopped a few times, but we definitely you could see the kids that are grasping the concept of hand fighting and utilizing things. So I came away, last year they were last at this tournament and we got 9th, and we had 8 kids place, 2 kids in the finals, and 1 kid, he lost 7-2 to the defending 4A state champion. So
that's awesome.
And he gave up a stupid takedown trying to do a Jap wizard.
You gotta learn, bro. You gotta learn. You gotta go all the way through, man.
Yeah, and I said, had I known he was a 4A state champ, I might have given you a different game plan. But at the end of the day, you learn, like, if you're going to commit to moves like that, you better know what you're doing with them. You can't be pulling off these fancy moves that you don't really practice all that much in the finals of the tournament against a defending state champion.
Yeah, man, that's a discussion you have all the time. Like, all right, we drill every day and we do a lot of the same stuff every day. How many hours have we spent doing Jap wizards? Not that many. So like that, where does that come into play as like, this is the go-to thing I do against the best guy in the tournament? They get out of their comfort zone and desperate. You do desperate things. Yeah, you said you get a little polylock, a little frustrated. It's funny too, because that's like, as a coach, what makes all the glory great is like how the struggle. So like you being, the realest of emotions. So when you see a kid fail and you see him struggle real hard, that's when you realize, like, all right, this is not just like a walk in the park. Like, this is a real mentorship as an adult. You're gonna have to drag kids out of the mud enough times so that when they are super successful, then it's like, holy shit, I can't believe we got to this point. And like, it's really hard to replicate that like emotional connection with an athlete after, besides going through the whole gamut of, ups and downs, starting out somewhere, having lows and highs, and then, either peaking or not peaking, and finding those different points. And it makes it all worth it.
As a human, I've grown so much since my first coaching experience right out of college. And back then, when it was about me and the wins and the losses and the records and that sort of stuff, where now it's like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you get better. Like, same thing I say to the kids in the classroom. I'm here to help you. Like, if you question anything, like, just know that I got in my car at the end of July and drove across the country to come here to be with you. Like, you keep asking me why I came here. Why would you move to this place? And I'm like, because I want to help you. I know the cheat codes to life, and I'm here to give them to you.
You really had the light bulb go off in my head when you were saying you were making kids think push-ups was cool, right? And it really made me think that I think one of the reasons we connected back in the day when we were in high school is because we both loved wrestling. We loved it, and we were outliers. It wasn't cool to love wrestling when we were coming up. You were getting made fun of for loving wrestling. And it was like,
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, dude, I did.
Yeah.
I remember Region, my junior year, Tomsville East kids like making fun of me, like Airey loves wrestling. I'm just like, yo, you better hope I don't wrestle any of you, because like it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like, it was just that mindset, and did that to us, that was everything. So I guess my question off of that is, how did you flip that as a coach to kind of make it cool? Was it just because of your passion? Was it because you were a little bit more educated than maybe the coaches we came up with, where kids hated it because they were cutting weight? Like, how do you create that environment as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's a multifaceted process, right? There's a lot of it has to do with your attitude towards the kids, right? So that's part of it. They look at you like you could be a role model or you could be a douchebag, right? There's like two ways that you could go about it. And if you're a douchebag, then no one's going to really respect you. And then you really aren't going to like have any type of influence on them at all. Right. So if you break that by being a douchebag, you've kind of lost that ability to impact them positively. But if you're a role model, now you can get them excited about the sport, right? So I can talk about college wrestling and get them excited about watching a college dual meet. We can do, we didn't have pasta parties. We had like snack bag parties, basically. So we would go and watch, we did it before the first tournament of the year. We did it a couple of different times, but go watch a college dual meet. Pack your bags of snacks for tomorrow so that everyone shows up at the tournament with food for the whole day. So you can't eat pasta all night, but you can have a snack bag. And the moms and the parents donated like oranges, clementines, bananas, apples, different bars, like the little packs of cookies and juice, water, Gatorade, Pedialyte, whatever the kids needed. They kind of asked me, and I gave them like a blanket list, and the kids picked and matched their own snack bags and got to watch wrestling. So again, when we were like growing up, there was no one excited about the Penn State Iowa duel that I knew of. There was no one that was getting fired up for Ohio State, Michigan, or whatever the case was. And now I could show them that, like, look at this packed arena. There's drama here. Like, this is exciting to watch. And if you want to like aspire to be that, you can, and we can do it. We can make that happen. I was there. You kind of have that. I wore that singlet at some point in time, so they can trust you. But again, if you're a douchebag, you miss that opportunity. So number one, be the role model. Number two, expose them to those things. I had wrestling jokes, as cheesy as it sounds. I talked about the Russians. I watched Russian videos that were off the wall. Jimmy, you do weird stuff wrestling. I do too. So I had funny sayings. So one of the things I would always show, I did different foot sweeps and different, like I do these ankle picks with my feet basically. And I would always say a stupid Russian accent. And in Russia, we use feet like hands. And like every time I said it, all the kids knew what was going down. We're going to learn some ridiculous move that no one is doing around here. But they thought it was funny and they thought it was cool. So those little anecdotals, and then trying to build the community, right? So getting parents behind it is big. We did a fundraiser at the beginning of the year, which is a social hour for the parents, and you kind of rile them up. And you kind of you have to talk a big game about how exciting it is to be part of this and how far you're going to go and the goals of the team and the everything else. And I made the kids feel super special too. So, in not like a cheesy way, but at the banquet, I would go kid by kid and name at least one thing or tell one anecdotal story about every single kid on the roster, about like how they impacted me or how like that impact on the whole team, or there was a breaking point in the season where I saw this in them. And it was very like I cared enough to that stuff was not scripted. It was just I would stand up there with the microphone and just let it rip. I would go light weights all the way up to the upper weights, backups, JV guys, the guy who only wrestled 2 matches. Every kid got an anecdotal story. And I think that's like their friends hear that. It all adds to that. Like, this is not shitty. This is a cool thing. Another anecdotal story, a kid that was a heavyweight, kind of overweight kid. He never really got any attention from the ladies and came out for wrestling. He was a football player, got in shape. He lost some weight, but we developed him as an athlete. So he's doing cartwheels and he can do like a lot of different agile movements. And he was, I forget exactly the story, but did a cartwheel in gym class and the girls were impressed. And he came to me like, oh, this girl was so excited and it was just like one of those funny things. You're like, man, this is like a kid who was kind of goofy and a little overweight, and now he's getting some positive attention from his peers. And that stuff's really cool. I know building a home environment, we did free t-shirt giveaways, and you got to be crafty with all this stuff. So the first shirt we did, I don't know if it was the first, one of the first shirts, it said Rumson Fairhaven against everyone. And it had Bulldog Wrestling in the back. So every kid in school wanted the Rumson Fairhaven against everyone shirt because it just was like, that's so badass. We did it in Desert Storm color, so tan with the dark brown print on it. And the first 100 people that came to the match got the shirt. So now you got all these kids who are fired up in this shirt. Now they're walking around the halls with Rumson Wrestling or Bulldog Wrestling on the back. And now it's, again, you're kind of building this brand that it's the first part is getting the core kids to think it's cool, all of them, to be excited about it. And then how can you get the kids who aren't wrestling to look at it and say, that's cool too? So we got people to show up for the matches. It's exciting. They're watching their friends like be animals. I don't know how many kids came up to me as the coach and said, I didn't know this was like fighting. You guys are basically fighting out there. And I'm like, yeah, man, we are. So come out every match and watch us duke it out with every school in the conference. And we got a lot of excitement that way. We did another shirt that was like a knockoff Vineyard Vines. It was a whale and it had a bulldog head on it. So it was the Vineyard Vines whale, bulldog head, pastel purple, dark purple print, pocket t-shirt. Like, it fit. You could have bought it at a Vineyard Vine store. And we doubled down on that order and ended up selling some to raise more money. But again, just like getting people super fired up about being a part of the program. Doing the off-season stuff. So I really pushed freestyle. I think it's fun. It's a different way you can compete and not be so worried about results. And then you can take kids to Fargo, and some of the kids, excuse me, it's an affluent area. So where I coached was, the parents were pretty well off. So a lot of them could afford those trips. But even in the instances where there was kids couldn't, we had support. We had fundraisers. We had different ways to get those trips paid for, So that was special too, to see the community like come in hot and send a kid to Fargo who otherwise was not making the trip, So just the whole spectrum of the kids being excited about it, exposing them to the higher levels, whether it's international or college or whatever the case may be, getting the student body in the school to be excited about the program, and then the larger community, the parents, and them seeing what you're doing, Rich, with your kids, like them seeing them become more accountable to show up, do the right thing, be polite, becoming like the type of humans and men that you want them to be. The parents become super appreciative. And that's another one of those trust building things. They know that you're not some arrogant guy who wants to just fill his coach, record with wins, and you're going to do anything no matter what to win. They know like you have their best interest in mind. And then you get trusted to do things that they might not understand or agree with. You're going to get questioned as a coach. But if you can point to all that stuff, like, hey, if I wasn't this for me, why would I be doing any of this? Like, you're seeing the benefits of this program rub off on your kid. And this is just part of the system that I've figured out is the best way to go, whether it's the way we did wrestle-offs or how we chose the lineup for different matches, or my policy if you didn't make weight, or what the case may be, it all kind of tied back to this integrity of the person being, a high performing human. And so you kind of get that trust from everyone. And I think all that together, all that positivity on multiple layers now makes it cool and fun and not like the outlier kid who gets picked on. A lot that goes into it, but full spectrum.
Yeah. Speaking of the gentleman that you had that learned how to do cartwheels and stuff and got some attention, I did something similar where, I told the kids that we were going to have the cheerleaders come in, and they were going to teach kids how to do cartwheels and stuff. And so a couple of days later, one of the new kids came over to me. He's like, "Coach," he's like, "check this out." And he like did a much improved cartwheel. And I was like, "Dang, dude, how'd you do that?" He's like, "Took your advice." He's like, "I asked one of the cheerleaders to help me, and she helped me." And so then I sat them all down. I'm like, "All right, guys, here's a life lesson for you." I'm like, "What do we learn from this?" And they're like, "Oh, we learned how to do a better cartwheel." Da, da, da. I'm like, "You're missing the point here." I'm like, what do we get out of this?" And they still been like, "Here's your end." I'm like, "Here's your icebreaker. It's always uncomfortable and awkward as boys at your age to talk to females." I'm like, all he did was ask someone for help. He got help. I said, and now he just made a connection with a pretty girl on the cheerleading team. I'm like, there's your life lesson for you.
Yeah, man. Break the ice. Yeah, man. Be humble.
Yeah.
All good stuff.
And then
Pick up the chicks.
He's another success story in the sense that he started at 230 and now he weighed out today at 206.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's just you hope and you kind of know, but you hope that that's the type of thing where these kids will take that for life. Because 230 high school kid overweight could go totally different directions. They could end up going down the obese, diabetes, real struggle the rest of their life or they can realize like, wow, I do have some say and control over this, and I could choose not to live my life like that to some degree. I mean, obviously people have different struggles, but it is cool to see like they're young enough and impressionable enough to learn that lesson now, and not when it's way harder to do that stuff.
Yeah,
not,
another
40 plus.
Another kid that was 213 at the start. Now he weighed out today at 176.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of weight. 30 pounds. It's like there's a lot of adults that would pay a lot of money to try to lose 30 pounds. And that kind of brings me to another topic we should talk about a little bit. Like the Reese Humphrey doing adult wrestling is so awesome to me. Like shout out to Reese. That's my workout, right? So I run a little bit. Rich and I chat back and forth about different things, but wrestling is still my primary way of staying in shape or keeping myself healthy and working out. And it's I had a 2-hour go last night just with 2 kids. It's basically I do 40 minutes with each of them separately, and then 40 minutes together. And the 40 minutes separate is real high level technique. I'm breaking apart what they're doing exactly. It's real high level technique, and then the last 40 minutes is like the grinder, the toughest drill you could possibly do, and then some live that I've crafted with some intention to make them change some habit, right? Whether it's getting tired or the way they pace the match. So that, and if adults could do that, I know it's hard because wrestling's brutal on your body, but if adults could go through wrestling like there's the opportunities for jiu-jitsu, it would be super beneficial for so many people. And it's just talk about cool, right? It's not that cool to be an adult wrestling still. I showed up today and I have like a little cut. You can't even see it, a little cut on my eyelid and some mat burn on my face. And my coworker was like, "What's going on? Like, you getting into fights?" And it's like, no, I'm just, first rule about, right? But no, but it's tough, right? It's a physical thing, but you're not getting punched in the face. It's not like MMA where you're getting beat up, and nothing against those guys, but that's definitely not for everyone. And if wrestling could catch on with adults the way jiu-jitsu has, I think that would be tremendous for the sport, but also for individuals. I think a lot of people could get a lot out of that. So I applaud those guys. They go hard on like the coolness of it, the marketing of it. They're always preaching about it, and they're trying to make something happen, which is admirable because it's one thing to turn Rumson Wrestling from 0-17 to, top 10 in the States. Another thing to try to create this entire culture of adult wrestling. And I think that's what he's trying to do. He's not really a small-minded guy, world team wrestler, coach of the year for USA Wrestling. He's not trying to do this for a couple drop-in classes at the local gym. He wants to make a movement of it. He committed himself, right? He wrestled in the veteran worlds to prove like, hey, I was a top level athlete. I was training full time. Now I'm not, but there's still opportunities for me to go win world medals. And I also think it's funny that he throws in his brother's face, who he wrestled in the finals. He whips the gold medal. Have you guys seen those videos of him online doing that?
Yeah.
It's so funny. They're like show up in an airport. One lives in New Jersey, the other lives in California. And he's at the hotel or the airport, and he unzips the bag and pulls the golds out and shakes them like, I bring them everywhere. So I think he's trying to do what I was talking about, right? Trying to make it cool for adults to get into the sport, which I think is awesome. I would love to see it catch fire. That'd be amazing.
Well, I think it's a great concept because I never would have started jujitsu if it was an option, right? Jujitsu, MMA schools was like really the only option besides wrestling with high school kids. And you know what that's like at a certain point, you're like, why am I cross-facing this kid? He's 16 years old. Like I need to find dudes my own size that can rough me up. So I definitely get it. I feel like it all goes back to who's presenting it and how it's being taught and the level of the people learning it, right? And I think going back to your point about it being a brutal sport, wrestling isn't a thing that you can take extended amounts of time off and then jump back in and get in a 7 match and not get hurt. Like really, like you can't. I think I got more injuries from those long gaps and then going back in that I actually did when I was like on the grind, back in the day. It's those long periods and then trying to get back into it and your body's just like, no way, bro. So I think if you can develop a system around that, I also think too, and this might be like something you guys don't agree with, but I think figuring out a way to combine submissions in with wrestling, and I'm not like talking like catch wrestling or like making it. I'd think in a way of morphing like a little bit of jujitsu with wrestling just to kind of give you options. And then if you have avenues where like MMA fighters are going to stop in and just do soul wrestling and you're going to work on mat stuff, I think that's something that gets missed in jujitsu and in MMA gyms when they teach wrestling. They don't teach any mat stuff. And if you really know how to control someone on top, I know I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but you can be really good in MMA. Look at Khabib when he gets on someone's back. But my point being, I think there's avenues for it. I just think there needs to be a structure and almost like I don't want to say like CrossFit, but like something where someone like packages something where they have like, hey, this is how you present it to people, or this is how you do it, and maybe like a belt system or something like that too, because I think that's another marketable thing. And as cheesy as we think it is as wrestlers, it's what keeps people coming back to jiu-jitsu year after year. You take some time off and you have a blue belt or a purple belt, you look at it get dusty and you're like, oh, I need to go get that brown belt. It's like that little thing. Whereas if like you're just going to a wrestling gym and you take some time off, there might not be that little bit of a pull to get you back in there.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about the belt system too. I think one thing that the belt system allows is someone who comes in late to the game can advance enough where they can end up being an instructor at some point too, and with credibility. So if you're 20, right, and you start jiu-jitsu at 20, and then by 32 you're a black belt and a legit black belt, you can start a school legitimately and teach people as well, right? And I don't think I'm far off on that, right? Would you guys agree?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a wrestler and you start at 20, by 32, is there any chance anyone's going to listen to you? Probably not, right? Because there's like no way to build credibility. Like it's been a long time since I wrestled in college, but I'm still the guy who wrestled at Penn State. And when I get introduced, that's how I get introduced. I don't get introduced as the guy who, came through some like there's no other criteria than what you did as an athlete, right? So it makes it difficult because we also know burnout is real too. So if you've wrestled for 20 years, by the time you're 30, then you may not want to do it for another 30 years, right? There's only so many more guys who are interested in doing that. But if it's a passion you find in your late college years, or you're out of college and you're looking for something to do, you could, in essence, if there was some way to systemize it, if you will, I think that's what the belt really builds, the system, the tiers, the justification, the leveling of across the board. This is kind of a universal language that we're talking about, how skilled someone is, that, and you can build on that. Like, not that every jiu-jitsu trainer has like, well, this is what you got to do a white belt and then blue, and you have to move up in a certain way, but there's a certain understanding of where you are in your practice, no matter whatever road you take to get to that level. There's somewhat of an understanding that's fairly universal about where you are. Where wrestling, it's really hard to quantify that. And I know there's people out there, like I have friends that have tried and are trying to move in that type of direction. And I think it's going to take a little bit of luck and a lot of genius to figure something like that out, because wrestling is not like jiu-jitsu in the fact there is no system of submission. It's just a kind of a different game, and everyone can be successful differently. But I would love for the evolution to potentially take place at some point. I mean, I think the other thing too, if we're talking about the forefront, is the women's wrestling movement is another huge benefit to our sport. And it's, I had I guess it was like about a year ago, where with ATAC, we did a practice with the D1 women's wrestling. We kind of put a little mini doc out there and just the idea was we're going to educate people on the struggles with starting a D1 program, right? It was all about like, well, if you want, you have to crawl before you walk. So we have to empower people to want to take volunteer positions in schools, and in those schools, they're going to have to convince the athletic department that they should be able to have a club. Like, that's like the step one, is like, how do you empower someone to have a club team? And the steps to do that, it's not like I just show up and do it. The school wants to know, like, all right, what's the schedule? Where are you going to train? Are you going to have uniforms? What's the budget? How are you raising money? Are you going to go compete? What are the opportunities? How many girls are going to sign up for something like this? Like, they want to know all these things. And again, if you're just a volunteer, like, why the heck would you want to just try to do that for with not seemingly any benefit? So their whole program was like, let's be a resource, an open source resource for anyone who's interested in trying to do this. You can kind of lean on our collective knowledge to help this progress, so that there can then be the next iteration, which is a full program. So and we all know who the leaders in wrestling are from a college standpoint. So to see like Iowa, like they're tripling down on women's wrestling. I think there was an interesting fallout, and I haven't really processed this in full thought, but if you look at, they had a slew of girls. They had 3, 4, 5 girls there, and they were training somewhat along the men's team. They had Mark Perry was there, and he was doing his thing with Hawkeye Wrestling Club, but he was dual role. He was the men's coach, and he was also trying to get these women to go. And I think that the administration of the coaching staff, I guess the whole coaching staff, realized that it wasn't the most beneficial thing for their program. Like, this was not structured that well. The girls didn't seem focused in their mind, or there was no benefit, or whatever the case may be. And that whole crew sort of vacated and went to Sunkist. And then they really went into it full force. They hired full women's staff, and they brought a ton of athletes that are college age girls to the school to train full time. And I think that there's like a level of seriousness that has to take place if you want it to be serious. If you want it to be a club team where there's a couple girls who have a limited opportunity to compete, who don't have a full structure, who no one has really committed anything to them, and then you want them to be full committed, it's kind of like, well, this doesn't really balance out. And then they go to Sunkist, where they're like fully committed, and now all those girls are making world teams. So I don't think it was like, it obviously wasn't Iowa. It obviously wasn't the girls. I think it just had to do with the understanding of the commitment that I was going to take to do something like this. So again, I applaud Iowa. They kind of had to pull the plug and start fresh, but then when they restarted, they went full force, and they again, a ton of athletes there. I also applaud like the all-star match that took place in the beginning of the year, had some women's matches, and we have so Peyton Prusen is one of the ATAC athletes, and she competed really hard fought match against a really tough opponent. And it was cool to see them get some spotlight and lay it on the line. And it's tough, man. I know I'm in the circle, right? So there's obviously people who are not super psyched on watching women's wrestling. And I understand there's levels to wrestling. And if you don't appreciate mediocre high school wrestling, then, mediocre women's wrestling probably isn't going to be excited. But there's the top level women that are so exciting that if you kind of just say, okay, there's some noise here. If you watch every women's match, they're a little behind us. I admittedly, but the top level are still super talented. I watch Helen Maroulis and I'm like, dang, I'm hitting that. Like, I'm going to watch her matches in slow motion and pick up technique. Like, no, without a doubt, I'm watching her matches in slow mo and panning back and forth. And like, how did she set that up? She's an artist, which is awesome. And, to see Sarah Hillebrand as like the best leg lace in the game, like her ability to tech people at a high level is crazy. So there's lessons to be learned in all that. And again, I think you have to crawl before you walk. So look at them and say, like, look, there's the potential. How are we going to support this community so that the best high school women's wrestlers are as good as the best men's high school wrestlers? Like, what's it going to take? It's going to take a lot. And first, open-mindedness is huge, and bringing it up. And I think, again, if you just look at, I appreciate like mediocre high school wrestling. There's something to it that, Rich, you're exposed that when you have a team, you get everyone. You get the kid who can't walk and chew gum at the same time, and then you get like the top level athletes. But if you can appreciate the nuances of getting through that part of your wrestling career, because everyone has that part of their career. No one wakes up, Jordan Burroughs. Jordan Burroughs was that goofy kid at one time too, and he had to figure out how to win matches too. So if you can appreciate that the growth phase of it, and then you should definitely be able to appreciate the whole movement of women's wrestling, because the whole movement is going through that growth phase. So again, it's exciting to see Flow. Throw some love to them. They have Lori has her own podcast there, and it's catching fire. So if women's wrestling and adult wrestling come in strong, I'd be pretty pumped.
The thing with the women's wrestling that we have to educate the male wrestlers on, and the fans wrestling, which are mostly males, we need this so we can get more programs. So whether you might not agree with their skill set on the mat, we need them so we can get more programs, so we have to support it. So if you're a Neanderthal and you can't get past anything else, get to that we need more women's programs to build up the men's programs. And I think you brought a really good point up with, the way Arizona State was doing things, and just the changing of the sport as, guys like us come to age, and, you have people with business backgrounds or different ways of doing things, and they start using it towards wrestling. I think wrestling has been in the dark ages for so long because it was all just Neanderthals hit doubles harder and, run your head into the wall. And now we're starting to change things up. And I think with technology too, and with, stuff like the ATAC app, we can kind of bring the sport into the light where maybe some other sports were 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that stuff's important. So that said, bringing up the app and, bringing the sport into the new age, what do you got going on? What are you innovating over at the ATAC app? And what do you got for the people at Airey Bros Radio?
Yeah, we'll jump right into that. I mean, just to touch on that too a little bit, it's the education piece is huge. So we'll kind of transition this right into the app. But one of my business partners, he wrestled a little bit in high school, and he loves wrestling, but he's not like the grind. He self-admittedly is not like the grinded out meathead college wrestler that I am, or there are some of our other business partners are. And he constantly says, stop thinking like a wrestler. You can't just beat this problem until it disappears. Like, we have to approach this differently, which is funny. And it's a tense moment when he says it typically, and it typically makes me laugh. And like, you're right, we gotta chill out here. Like, this is not the way to go. Right. But anyway, so, with the app, we have a lot of cool stuff. I mean, the biggest thing we just kicked off, which we sent our first email out about it today, is our full team program. So now we are able to service coaches. And what that means is we built a tool on our back end. So like my co-founder, Nick Roy and I are able to onboard entire teams. So like, we would talk to a coach like Rich and say, okay, give us your specifics about your training needs. Or if you don't know what they are, let us help. We can walk you through it. But generally speaking, we kind of start with the most intense parts of training, whether it's strength or endurance. And in season, it's definitely practice too. But aside from practice, what's your primary focus? Is it getting stronger? Is it getting in better cardio shape? Or is it both of them equal? And then we can work backwards from there. So we say, okay, it's strength training. I wanted my kids to lift. And what do you recommend? Is it 3 days, 4 days? It depends on the coach, depends on the program, depends on their goals, but we'll kind of establish where we want to go with them on that cadence. And then we build in the cardio onto that as well. So now we can start programming out the proper periodization. We spread those things out appropriately on their schedules. And then we start building in the supplementary, the flexibility and agility pieces. So you can use those things as warm-ups and cool downs to complement those other type, the interval training and the pure strength training. And then the next tier would be the recovery. So we build in the recovery activities or phases. So if you have a strength training day and then you have a cardio day the next day or interval day the next day, what are the activities that we're going to prescribe to help prepare you better, whether it's a heat, sitting in a hot bath, or it's rolling out your legs after a run, or, there's a lot of different things that we can do to help kids recover faster. Sleep being a big one too. Like we always tell the coaches, beyond all the activities, there's the life essentials too. So we have sleep, nutrition, and hydration. And those are the things that the kids should be always using, kind of regardless of what your needs are, your schedule are, because those things are going to help you on all fronts. They're going to help you train harder. They're going to help you recover better, and then ultimately help you compete at a higher level. So again, we kind of space all that stuff out. We make these essentials somewhat mandatory, and then we build in the mindset pieces. And those are things that we just periodize throughout the week, depending on how much the coach wants their kids to use it. The one thing we say to every kid or every coach is the reflection aspect of the app is the thing that you do every single day. So every morning, set a goal for the day. Every night, reflect on the day and figure out what went well and what you need to work on. Wake up the next day and set a goal for the next day. And that purpose that you're going to live out all day, that's like in this constant loop of, I have a goal and then I'm going to reflect to see how I did on it. You're super present on what's happening, and then you ultimately gain control over your progress. So if hey, I had practice and I got X happened, I want to make sure the next day I'm focusing on that. So that's something I can control the next day. Or I ran out of gas. I'm going to set a goal like, okay, this week I'm going to make sure I do all my cardio or all my interval training and get in better shape. And then you kind of build that routine and that habit. So that's the thing that we want people to really focus on, is set intention and reflect on it. And then everything else gets kind of filled in the gaps. So for us to be able to not have to walk kids through that, but take a coach who's maybe a higher level thinking on these things, explain that to them, and then ingest it, then give us feedback, and then we can push it to their whole team. So we're able to take either in like a roster list, like just give us your roster with emails. We'll pull that into our system. We'll create all of their accounts automatically. All the subscriptions get handled in advance. We can send like either ADs or admin or the school administrators invoices. Everything can get paid automatically through our system. Kids don't have to think about payments at all. And now they're all on the same page. So we look at it as like, how do you build the culture outside of your wrestling room too? Like there's a lot that goes into being a good athlete, not just the best wrestler. Obviously, they're not mutually exclusive. Being a good wrestler, you have to be really good at wrestling, but then the other things you need to, as well. You got to be strong. You got to be in good shape. You got to be flexible. You got to be agile. You got to have a strong mindset. You got to eat right. You got to recover properly. You need sleep. So this is like all of those things that we can empower a coach to be that expert without being that expert. So if they don't have that inherent knowledge of all of those aspects, or if they don't have the staff, Rumston was small. We didn't have a 6-person coaching staff. It was me, Billy George, and before him, Seth Herman. And then we had one volunteer who wrestled a couple of years, and he was great at helping out where he could, but that was it, right? We had like a three pack, and it worked. We made it work. But this is something that we can give the whole team, that nutritionist, the whole team, that sports specific strength and conditioning coach, the whole team, that mindset training that otherwise they may not be privy to. So we really it's been a hit. We just launched, the platform went live on Halloween, October 31st. And in the first month and a week, so first 5 weeks, I think we have 8 teams. So 2 college teams, an NAIA team, Bluefield College, and then Bluefield University, excuse me. And then Muhlenberg too is on it. And then several short conference high school teams, Wall, Long Branch, there's a bunch of them at Shore signed up. Nick Roy is really pushing all of that forward, which is awesome. And he's a great resource for those coaches and those kids. And we're super pumped about being able to, push this to entire teams. So that's one big thing. And then the next thing that we're working on, we're super excited about is we're calling it ATAC ratings. And if you think about what like a FIFA player rating is, or like we were kids, everyone played Madden or NCAA football or whatever those games were that you were into, and those players had ratings. So when you picked your team, right, it was like, well, this team's really good at passing and I like passing, so that's the player I'm going to pick as my quarterback. That's who I'm going to put in, right? So we're doing this assessment, this baseline assessment during your onboarding. And based on that assessment, you get a player rating. So you get an overall attack rating, which is a number, and then you get individual stats for strength, endurance, mindset, flexibility, and agility. And then as you're training, those numbers will tick up. So right now the leaderboard is all based on output. So like how much activity that you do in the app, you score points for. We're kind of changing that to athletic output. So we can have like that somewhat of a measuring stick. And we want to be able to have a leaderboard with, me versus Rich, who's got better stats, or, Rich versus Jim and who's got better stats. And we think that like, he's pointing at him. What do you think about that, Rich? Who's got the better stats?
Oh man, what are we talking about? Overall, or?
Yeah, overall, who's got the better attack rating?
Oof, I don't know.
I mean, these days, I think he definitely has me in all fitness aspects for sure. 100%. I'm saying we're both on the same program. He's got body weight, endurance. I think I could, move a little bit more weight.
All right. So here's the ultimate answer. I have right now, that's not live in the app, but I built a Google form so that people can fill out the Google form, and then I can calculate the stats using your algorithm. So offline, I'll have to send the form to both of you, and we can answer this question behind closed doors. We just launched Jordan Burroughs' program in the app, which is exciting. So part of the deal with these guys, when we bring them on, is we ask them to fill out these 2 Google forms, and one is your stats assessment. So we ask them all these baseline questions, and then using that, we generate their athlete levels, right? Their attack rating and all the different stats. And the second part is we ask for their training schedule. So we figure out, what's their lifting schedule like? How frequently are they focusing on endurance or stretching or doing agility work, or what are those activities? Or do you foam roll? Do you use heat? What are the ways you're recovering? How much sleep are you getting? And kind of all that stuff we can throw into our algorithm and then send to these users based on their commitment. They get a subset of it. So we know that every kid who signs up for ATAC isn't going to be working out 3 times a day like some of these top athletes do, or 2 times a day, but we can ask for their commitment levels. And then based on that, we can tailor these programs to fit their needs too, or give them the full fledged. Right now, you sign up for Jordan Burroughs, you're finding out like the frequencies he's doing, everything, and the type of stuff he's doing, and you're able to mimic that. So that's really exciting too. That's these athlete programs we think is a big push. Nick and I joke around like, who are we now? We're old and washed up. No one cares about what I think is great training, but they do care about what Jordan Burroughs thinks is great training. I think it's a resource that, again, kids otherwise wouldn't have. So being able to follow the Trent Hidlay program, the Ryan Deacon program, or the Bryce Andonian program, or Maya Latoya, or Peyton Prusen. So we have some women in there too. And you get to follow what they're doing. I think that's something that you really wouldn't have access to without the ATAC app. So that we're super fired up about that. And I think our biggest hurdle that we're trying to like brainstorm how we make this movement for like stretch further and further and further is how do we convince athletes and their parents that this is a suitable program to really level them up. Like the programming that we're doing is as high level as it can get. Like the periodization is better than you're going to get from anyone, because everyone's working in a vacuum. So your strength coach doesn't really know about anything else, right? Like if you're working with a mindset coach, they're not really sure of the full breadth of what you're doing, where our app kind of encompasses all of that. So each individual piece is working in optimal, but they're also working together in an optimal space too. So we're trying to figure out a way, like how do we get the buy-in from the community? And we know like fitness apps are nothing new. Like obviously Peloton as a connected device is crushing it, and Strava is crushing it, and Nike has NTC, and there's a lot of workout apps out there, but they're all for people like, me or you guys who just need to get off the couch and move around and do something to stay in shape. But that's a lot different than becoming an optimized athlete, right? Like performing at a high level is a lot different than, well, I'm 38 and I don't really want to get a gut, so I better do something. So that market is widely accepted. People know I can get off the couch and I could do any number of these apps and start to get in shape. And now it becomes like, what program is fun for me? And then you get to choose the one. But I think there's still this piece where parents and young athletes don't really have that inherent knowledge that training apps can be the solution for them that they need. And only a certain, there's stats on it, right? There's only a certain number of people, call it 20% of athletes, have the resources to actually get this level of training. So to afford a strength coach, a nutritionist, a mindset coach, someone's going to focus on agility, someone's going to help them with flexibility, a recovery expert. There's only a certain number of people that can afford that. And then the other part of it, live in a geographic location where those resources are available to them. So like, look at the vast majority of the country is living in a rural area where those services aren't available in one place, right? There's no way you can go, like here, we're lucky. In New Jersey, there's a ton of strength coaches. There's mindset coaches. There's nutritionists everywhere. There's a lot of resources, but we take it for granted. And we also take it for granted that our parents in this area, a lot of them, not all of them, some of them can afford those resources. So what we're doing is providing them for a much, much more affordable price. I mean, our monthly subscription is $7. We joke around, that's like less than a middle of the road Starbucks order, right? And at $50 a year, it's super cheap. It's affordable to be able to sign up for a whole year for less than a family meal at any restaurant. I mean, I don't eat fast food, but I'm imagining if you have a family of four, you're probably going to spend more than $50 even at a fast food spot. So with that low cost of entry and all of those resources, I think that's our biggest hurdle, right? It's just kind of getting people to buy into what we're doing. And we know that part of that is making it more fun. And that's where these ATAC ratings come into play too. We look at how can we be more engaging? Just like I mentioned, what makes wrestling cool? And there's a long explanation for that. And I didn't just come up with that, right? That was like 15 years of me coaching wrestling and kind of doing the wrong thing and doing the right thing and learning from different experiences, taking advice from a lot of people. I mean, none of those ideas were particularly mine. I just kind of like took a little bit from a lot of different people and then collectively put them together for my system. We're trying to do the same thing at ATAC. So we're taking feedback. We're figuring out ways where we can lay out the app in a much cooler way. So for instance, right now there's a calendar. And when you open the calendar, it's kind of an ordered list of things you should do throughout the day, but it might be like 15 things deep. And 5 of those are meals and water. So they're not like anything you're not doing. 2 of them are sleep, going to bed and waking up. So that's 7. And then the reflection at the top and the bottom is they take about a minute each. So that's 9. So 9 out of the 15 you can do in like 2 minutes without much thinking. But if you look at a list of 15, it kind of seems overwhelming. And we realize that this is like, how do you get kids to just do that first one? So we also we're laying out ATAC 3.0. We have it in design. It's been in design for a while. It's coming up in our programming sprints or the actual development work. But there's a workout screen that it shows like a roadmap of a workout. So here's the exact thing, the warm up you should do. Then here's the primary workout. Here's the cool down. Here's the recovery thing. And it has a connected dot, almost like a game. So you're going from level 1 to 2 to 3 and advancing through this. And then the mindset screen is in its own little place. So when you're ready to do a mental activity or trying to build confidence, get motivated, stay focused, calm down, all those are in a cool place that look way more engaging, a lot of colors, some cool graphics. And then the life essentials, we built a dashboard, or we're building a dashboard. So you get all time, you get a snapshot of your nutrition throughout the day. There's like really bright colored things like charts and graphs, if you will, but not super technical. They're just very fancy or pretty looking, basically. But it's a good way to check in on your nutrition, your hydration, where your sleep's at. And we really think that this new layout will help get people excited about using the app every day too. And those are the big things. And then we, down the road, long term, we look at connectivity and monitoring, and that's the next phase of this, right? Like, how can you bring all of that information and then monitor it more closely? Right now, it's a lot of user entry, data entry, which is it's solid, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but if we can automate any or all of it, that's going to help us make it a little more seamless as well. And then obviously, I know you and I, the three of us, each, me and Jimmy and me and Rich, in separate meetings, but we spent a lot of time going over some really high level programming that ultimately hasn't made it into the app yet. And we know the power of that stuff. It's just a matter of, in the queue, how can we bring that stuff in? I think, to be honest with you, I want to revisit with both of you the stuff we were working on, because I have some ideas on how we can kind of take everything that we got and, from a technological standpoint, deliver it in a super amazing way. But I just really want to get your feedback offline before I make any decisions about that. But yeah, so exciting time for ATAC. We're super fired up about what's coming down the pipe, and bringing new athletes on and training kids and getting success stories too. We're early, so hearing back from coaches that did the coaching platform, yeah, man, it's great, because I got all my kids in the weight room, and before it was kind of like me throwing together a circuit and hoping it was going to be the right thing to do, and just kind of telling kids to try to grab weights they're comfortable with. And there was no real structure, weight room structure, which could be dangerous, right? Kids could get hurt, or it could be a waste of time. And this gives them a way to be that expert in the room without having any inherent knowledge. And we're pumped about it.
So with the team component, you mentioned the structure in the weight room and that sort of stuff. Is that a situation where we get the Seneca Bobcats on there, or is it in practice stuff, or is it more like on your own to get better, or is it both?
So the practice planning stuff is different. I would say that it's primarily non-wrestling technique. There's a ton of wrestling technique in there, don't get me wrong. But the way that I would structure a wrestling training, like when I'm building my team at Rumson, right? Like the way I structure my practice plans has to do with like live feedback in the room. Like I'm observing what's going on, and I'm making decisions based on what I see to how I'm going to structure my practice the next day or for 3 days, or it depends on how they perform at a tournament. So we don't have like, there's practice. You can do full practices. You can pick a time. I want a 2-hour practice, and then hit start, and it'll walk you through and have video instruction, timers. It'll walk you through a full practice. Now, if you don't have any idea what to do, you could totally just roll with that, and it would be very beneficial. The technique that we're showing is super high level. It's fundamental, so it's not like it's going to be over anyone's head. There's nothing that's too high level that everyone in your room shouldn't be able to see. But I'm a stickler for high level basics. That's like my whole shtick, right? Like, and scrambling is amazing, and that's like phase 2 of this. But the high level basics, being able to execute the basic techniques at the highest level, is really going to elevate your game. And then anything you can stack on top of that is going to help more. But a lot of it's the out of the room stuff. I mean, some of the stuff you could do in the room, like a lot of the agility stuff, right? It's great. It's great for warm-ups. The stretching stuff, great for warm-ups. The intervals, which I know you don't need any help with, but the intervals are great for a conditioning workout, whether you're, doing a longer interval, like a slower burn interval as a warm-up, or a more intense interval, just focusing on improving your lungs, your the whole system, I guess, but your heart, lungs, all that capacity. But then there's the mental stuff, I think, is the biggest thing that you do outside of the room. And the nutrition is the biggest thing outside of the room. And then strength training, there's various schools of thought on it, whether how you're going to lift in season, out of season. I think that lifting in season is critical. It's just a matter of making adjustments. So that's something that a lot of the coaches do as a team. So it's not in the wrestling room, but we're going to do the team lift together and use the strength training program. But then I'm expecting you to do these things outside of our time together. So I really don't think it's like, in the room, it could be very useful, but it's like, there's things that you could do as a team, and then there's things that you could do separate, and those may all be outside of the wrestling room, but there's definitely that balance of as a team and then on your own.
So you mentioned something I've been hesitant to pull the trigger on, so I'm curious to get your thoughts. You talk about the high level basic techniques and stuff, and there's a plethora of content in the library of techniques and stuff. What are your thoughts on actually like having a TV in the room and rather than trying to go through a Jordan Burroughs technique, actually showing Jordan Burroughs doing a tutorial on, one of his techniques or one of his hand fighting things, and then seeing how the kids grasp that, with all the technology and all the content that's out there. I've been thinking of like, because I have the Rudis Plus, I have the different things of like, I know what I want to implement. Sometimes maybe my delivery isn't catching on with them. And I'm thinking of like, well, what if I just show, Kyle Schneider and his ankle pick technique to them and seeing where that goes?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a good, like, when I was at the Edge growing up, Ernie would throw on some tapes, and it wasn't technique specific. It was more like highlights from matches, and he would slow them down and watch different techniques, and he would do the explaining. But seeing someone else do it, and it could just be that, let's say 50% of the room learns it from Coach Airey, and 50% of the room learns it from Kyle Schneider, and now you're crushing it, right? So it's like, I don't think any of this stuff is like set it and forget it, So I would say use every tool that you could use, right? Like I have Rudis Plus too, the founder of another tech platform, and they do a great job over there with their content. And it's different. We offer completely different things. And I think that, watching the way they break down technique is cool. And that might be something that resonates with kids. And then half the team might have no interest in it. You never know. But I think that using kind of all the tools, and there's no harm in trying it. I can't tell you how many times I've been at practice and been like, well, that was a bust. Like there at every level. I mean, I remember I was teaching the camp for Team New Jersey, and it's like 100 kids, and there's some of the best kids in the country. The whole Blair team's there. There's a bunch of New Jersey state champs. There's 30 kids at AA at Fargo in the room. And I completely biffed it on showing this technique. And it was something that I was doing a ton, and I could hit on any kid in the room. So I instantly had credibility because I took down like 7 state champs in a row doing the same thing. And everyone was like, huh? What, like, you're the old guy. Like, how did that? You weighed 20 pounds less than me, and you're taking me down at will. So I was like, all right, I'm going to show this because it's hitting, everyone's susceptible to it. And it was really like the first time I tried to break it down for kids. And I had to bring it in like 7 times. It's not that we didn't get it. Let's start over, but you kind of have to just like roll with it. Like I have enough confidence in myself to like laugh it off and be like, man, I fucked that up bad. Like, and say it out loud. And kids get it. Like you're not perfect at all by any means. No one's going to be perfect, but giving it a whirl. But now that same technique I've showed to, 100+ kids. And so I'm not going to mention names. They're beasts, and I'm definitely not taking any credit for their success. But one of the kids at that camp, who I had done privates with as well when he was younger, but one of the kids at that camp picked up on that technique, and now it's one of his go-to leg attacks. And he's a D1 All-American for a Big Ten school, and he's not what a Rumson kid. So he's you see that stuff, and you're like, damn. And then a mutual friend of ours that he didn't know, we knew each other, came up to him and was like, oh, I didn't know you knew Heller. And he's like, oh yeah, he showed me this. And he's like, holy shit, like that's pretty funny. It's a small world, like how that all works out, So you just have to like, you can't be afraid to just give it a whirl. What's the worst that happens? You waste 7 minutes of, one practice of 1 year and one blip on these kids' radar. And if it doesn't work, you laugh about it and say, that didn't work. Then you make fun of yourself and everyone laughs. But I would say, yeah, man, self-deprecating is the best way to go. So I would show it, like, yeah, give it a whirl. I mean, and that could be just another angle. They might just see, and he might just show it a little different, and it's tough. I know I try to show Jordan Burroughs blast double, and I always like make a joke about it when I'm going to do it, because I'm not Jordan Burroughs. I'll never be able to hit the double like he does. And so I always joke around, say I'm going to channel my inner Burrows, like everyone channel your inner Burrows, and let's see if we can shoot double legs like them. And again, you kind of like, you bring it in, and now you're not taking yourself too seriously, because I'm never like, I can't show Jordan Burroughs double and pan it off as my own, because I don't shoot a double like that, but it is super effective. And when guys can hit it, it works. And I do hit the way he shoots it on kids, but I'm not like, obviously I'm not hitting it on college kids or world level guys or anything like that. But so there's value to it. But I think if you could use that as a resource, the more resources you have, the better.
Right on. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan, I definitely feel you with biff and moves, especially trying to teach a funk roll back in the day, the trial and error of the guy going over, then having to like create that whole system. So I've been that guy in the middle of a room, like, yeah, I hit this live, but I don't know how to teach it. Sorry, guys. So I definitely feel that. And then one thing that you made a comment on that really is something I talk to Rich about all the time. And you talk about like the one-stop shop, right? And having all the different coaches. And I always think about it as, when I was in high school, had the wrestling coach, had the coach at the school, had the nutritionist. And it's like, no one ever talked to each other. There's like how like we cared so much about like trying to win a state title. We never like took the coaches out to dinner. I'm like, hey, let's get on the same page. And like, so I think having that app and having it all in the app, and you're having all that to go with, and having the mental stuff too, right? Like that was something too. I remember like calling a hotline to some like psychologist like Montclair, who used to like come to the wrestling clubs and like give us motivational speeches, and that was like your mental training. So to have that on your phone is, you're leveling up. And again, it goes back to, we have this technology and we're using it to our advantage, and these kids get to, make the most out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman last week who he was a physicist and neurobiologist, and he taught post-grad medical students both of those subjects. And one of the things that we were talking about was what's called system thinking, and it was really cool. And after we talked for like 2 hours, and throughout the whole conversation, I'm like, man, this is a really good job of explaining kind of what ATAC is and why ATAC is important. And the way systems thinking goes is you have a system, which is the sum of parts. So for us, we have all like the principles of ATAC, the strength training, the endurance, flexibility, agility, the reflection, recovery, nutrition. And those things are each individual parts, right? So that makes up the system. But what's important about it is how they interact with each other, and then how they interact with the background, right? So strength training and endurance training, they're separate, but they need to interact in some degree. And same with the flexibility and agility, they need to interact to some degree. But then there's also the user input. So there's a human element to it too. So how it interacts with the person, right? It's taking feedback from them when they're doing their strength testing, they're entering their results, and it's digesting that and spitting out the next set of results. They're entering the foods that they're eating, and it's adjusting their meal plan. And there's all these little tidbits that are receiving information from the outside. And then ultimately, the sum of all that makes this system super strong. And I think that, again, like you just mentioned, the uniqueness of that, and then you can kind of apply that same level of thinking to a wrestling program, right? What makes a successful wrestling program? Great coaches, great administration. You need a facility. You need community support. You need fan base support. And then those all things interact with each other, right? You can't have fan base if your kids are assholes and they're not going to wrestle well and they treat people with disrespect. Like, you need them to be respectful to then have fans, right? And then if you want parent support, it comes down to how you're raising these kids. So all those things working with each other in the program, all the kids plus the exterior of the program, it's really interesting way to think and problem solve through kind of all of these different topics that I'm discussing and thinking about.
With the app and having all the stats from all the years, are there any outliers or numbers that come through? Like, this person is constantly on this app, like, oh my God. Like, is there like anything like that, or just like crazy numbers you see that make you scratch your head?
We're not monitoring individual users that
Okay.
closely. It's more like the sum of the analytics that how we make our decisions, right? Like we're programming and we're making sure that there's a succinct like consistency, right? But we're looking at like the averages of it. So we have like this many people completing this many activities, and on average, that means they're completing this many a week. If you look at the leaderboard, you get a really good handle on who's using it a lot. So if I use it a certain amount and then someone has 5 times as many points, you're like, man, this person is in this app all day, every day. But we think that, again, those things are they all kind of work in succinct. So there's no like, what the hell is this person doing? They're going way overkill. Like we haven't seen anything like that. I think the biggest eye opener I got was our guy Greg Bolsack's one of our ambassadors, and he filled out the stats form, and his strength numbers were literally off our charts. Like we have a data set that we acquired before we built the app. That is how we created our algorithms, and it's based on the performance of like 20 million lifts that people had put into this public database, and his numbers were off the 1%er charts. Like it was like, all right, on a scale of 0 to 100% on your weight range as a male, this is where you should be, like 100% being this. He was like 102, 103% every time. Like every lift was like, Jesus Christ, this guy's a freak. And then his flexibility numbers were down and his agility numbers were down. We had like a laughing call about it. He's like, man, I'm stiff. And I'm like, dude, you're like the strongest human your size. Like you're going to be a little stiff, so all part of that balance. Right. So it's good. It's funny. That was like one of those eye openers to see, or, just seeing those numbers come through is cool. I think, I really think these athlete, the ATAC ratings, right, our numbers are going to be eye opening for people too, to see like what makes someone really good at wrestling. So Bryce Andonian, completely different body type, really long, lean dude. And you see his mile time and you're like, damn, this kid should run track, and then he's not the strongest guy in the room, but he is super successful wrestling, right? So it's like there's so many different ways to be good at this sport, and that's it's cool. It's that sum of the parts, kind of going back to what I was just saying, like that collection of all of those things makes you great, and your recipe for greatness might look different than the other guy, and I think that's even more so why these numbers are playful, because you'll see like the way we're set it up is there's like a chart kind of next to each other. If you think of like a UFC pre-fight, and they have like the picture, and then their like takedown percentage and all that stuff, and they're side by side. We kind of have it laid out like that, but there's these colored lines. So one guy's one color, like a video game, the other guy's the other color, and then you can see whose line is bigger. Like, oh, this guy's obviously way stronger, and this guy has way more endurance, but they're both pretty flexible. They have pretty good mindset. Like, who would win in a wrestling match? It's just like that cool side by side look. So I say that when I say off the charts, that's the thing I saw that was like, whoa, this dude is a freak strong.
I think that goes back to what we would say about what makes wrestling so great, is that there isn't one kind of cookie cutter body type or athlete. You can have a long, lengthy guy that can run like a deer and be successful at an upper weight, or you can have a guy that can lift a truck and he's going to be successful. And there's all different body types across the board, regardless of the weight class. You have tall lightweights, you have short, stocky guys, and so that's pretty interesting that you get that kind of feedback to see like, well, this guy doesn't necessarily fit the mold, but he's exceptional, or, this guy's as strong as an ox and he's exceptional too. So yeah, it just goes back to what makes wrestling such an amazing thing. And again, that's a great recruiting tool, because you can, well, I can't do that, I'm this type, or like, no, we actually need someone at your weight class, so you should come out and try it. Or on the girls side of things too, it's just explaining to them how many college programs there are now. It's like, you want to get your college paid for and you're an athlete, come on, let me teach you a single leg and a spiral ride and maybe a cradle or something. We'll see if we can get you some books and some college paid for.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. It's cool. It's good to see you made an awesome point there, like the variation in body types, and we're all pretty small guys, right? Like the three of us are all lightweights, lifetime lightweights. I like being a lightweight coach. But we're not playing. I would not have excelled at any other sport that wasn't weight specific. There's just no way I could have played. Even if you look at like lacrosse. Like those guys are big, strong, fast dudes. I would have gotten mowed over and beat up on. Football, obviously, no way. Basketball, no way. There's limiting
Maybe cross
factors
country.
there. Maybe cross country. I don't know. Guys like Rich would just smoke me though. So I can run a decent mile, but I never could put it together. I didn't have any coaching. That probably has something to do with it. But
Yeah, you need
yeah.
a little bit of specificity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, another cool thing, just almost a little plug here too, was we're raising capital on a platform called Start Engine right now, which is exciting. So, talk about a little bit of education. Tech companies are hard to start. They're hard to grow. We require a full-time staff of developers that are constantly working to make sure there's no bugs, or if there's a bug, it gets addressed, or improving the product. So keeping those people paid is difficult when you're offering a $6.99 a month subscription. So we're constantly looking for investors that are want to support us, but also are looking for a return on that investment. And we think we have high hopes of being super successful as a business. So we're real psyched. We just launched this campaign about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. And it allows anyone who's interested in investing to come on and invest. And it doesn't require a lot of capital to sign up. And you're officially an owner of ATAC, and you can be a part of the family legit. So we're excited to have that opportunity. We got some good traction going on right now. Again, it's just a website basically where you can sign up and then read all about us as a business. So you'll see some of our analytical information. You can read more about our team. So myself, Nick Roy, are my co-founder, plus our designer and our development staff, and kind of their backgrounds. They're amazing people who are grinders too. And it's just a cool thing to be able to get the inside scoop on our business. And we're happy to open this door. And some of the social posts we've been putting out and emails we've been putting out is about this offering. And it's cool. It's that unspoken thing most of the time when you're in a business like this. No one talks about raising capital or fundraising. And even in opening this door, I've had so many people that run small businesses or that want to run small businesses have come to me and asked, well, I have a great idea. How do I get started? How can I get this off the ground and do something with it? And I have this story to tell about, fundraising. And it's not the most fun all the time. It's hard work to raise capital and build an investment pool and be able to build out cool features and move on and bring athletes into the system as well. So we're super grateful. We had a lot of support for the first 3 years of this business. Some people that just basically bet on me and Nick to be able to deliver what we said we could. And now that we have a platform off the ground and you can download it yourself and check it out, and you don't have to just believe that we're going to be capable of building software, even though neither of us had a background on building software. Now we can open that up. And it's, like I said, we have some good traction. There's a lot of people, following our campaign and starting to make investments. So I love to share this opportunity with people to make a play, and hopefully they make a smart choice and invest in ATAC and see a return on that investment. So again, just want to make that little plug there too. If anyone's interested in becoming an owner of ATAC, the opportunity for limited time is available.
So you mentioned a limited time. I wanted to ask you about that. If it was going to be sort of like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe kind of timeline, where there's a window when people can get involved.
Yeah. So it's all crowdfunding. So Kickstarter, GoFundMe. Well, GoFundMe is fundraising in a nonprofit type of way, different than a Kickstarter or Start Engine. Kickstarter kind of allows anyone to put on their program or their business, and then anyone can invest. Start Engine has a very, very stringent application and approval process. So we had to go through financial reviews and legal reviews, and all of our formation documents had to get approved by different, tiers of legal review. And then we had to do a full SEC Reg CF, which is regulated crowdfunding, raising capital before this. So to be respectful of those investors that came in previously and ourselves, we wouldn't half-ass this, but in general, we have an obligation there's a board, it's an official board of directors that Nick and I are on. And as we have fiduciary duties to make sure that we only do this in the highest caliber way. So this was a platform that we could basically put our trust in to steer us in the right direction with compliance and what's called cap table management. So all the people that are coming in as investors are legally owners of the business. And that's a big undertaking when you have potentially thousands of people investing, and that's part of their system as well as the capitalization table management. So it's just like, Kickstarter with a lot more regulation and a lot more oversight and a lot more, aid, if you will, from them. They're helping us out big time. So it's there is a date. There's the initial offering has an end date around end of January, and then there's opportunities to extend, so we can always move that deadline depending on how successful the campaign is going. But generally speaking, there's a upper limit, and then that date that kind of push us. And unfortunately, there's one of the SEC regulations is you can't mix terms and non-terms. So I'm speaking freely about the opportunity, which means I'm not allowed to tell you what share prices are and corporate valuations or our cap, and all that stuff is off limits for this conversation, unfortunately. But we do have that documentation you can read. It's not exclusive. Anyone who wants to find that out can go to our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. It's on our campaign page. We're definitely advertising it. It's just I can't say that those sentences at the same time as these sentences.
They're definitely listening to Airey Bros Radio, so it's a good thing that you checked yourself there.
That's right. You never know. We're gonna blow this thing up.
You never know. Is right. There's always people listening that you don't think are listening, but I'm always surprised when I get hit up by people. So.
Yeah, and we'll be sharing this too on that platform. We do corporate updates. So what we'll do is do a corporate update that links to this page, which means that for all intents and purposes, Start Engine has to approve it. Not that they wouldn't, but for that reason too, I got to behave from that standpoint, SEC standpoint.
And so with those emails that you sent out, I been super swamped, so I saw them come across my brain. I didn't get really a chance to dive in too deep, but there's links in those emails that you guys sent out where we can go in and start the process and contribute and become a part of it.
Yep. It's also on our link in bio. So if you go to ATAC's Instagram page, you'll see right in the link in bio, we have like a full layout, but the top option is the Start Engine campaign. We have a video that Jordan Burroughs is one of the part owners in ATAC as well. So him and I kind of did a video together to explain the opportunity, to give a little background on the business and kind of give a little bit of insight, kind of like what we're talking about, where we're going and how we're going to expand this thing. So if you want to check out JB and I talking about it, it's on his Instagram, it's on our Instagram. And then again, the link in bio, our Insta is ATAC.app, and you can click through there and see it. If you just search us to ATAC, you'll find us on any of the socials, and there's a link through.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, if you go to startengine.com, you can also just search ATAC in there, click Start Investing, and then search us and kind of go through. And again, there's a way you can follow our campaign, which is cool too. So if you're not sure about making the investment or the time isn't right for you, or maybe you have no intentions, but you want to check it out, you can always click the follow button. And then as we post updates on our campaign page, you'll get, those updates direct to your email, plus, the fundraising updates as well. So as more capital comes in, you can kind of track our progress and determine whether or not you're interested. But it's a cool opportunity. Yeah, it's a learning experience for me. I'm super pumped. I know Nick was the person who brought this to my attention, and we were a little skeptical about it from the beginning, and then right from the first meeting, we were like, man, this is legit. This is really, really cool. We'd love to share this opportunity with our, people that want to invest in us. Some of our friends and family came in too. So it's people that believe in us and believe in our ability to execute at a high level, that want to see a return on this investment. They're in too, which is cool. Yeah. And so interestingly, the fun tidbit, the CEO of Start Engine was the CEO of Acclaim Games and Activision. So the founder of Mortal Kombat and Call of Duty, same guy who he just sold that business to Microsoft this year. But we got to meet him a couple of different times. Really cool to talk business and with another person who's in technology and the struggle that is fundraising and then building a platform. And it's cool. It's cool to hear the success stories too, because it is a grind and we love it. And we're seeing really good traction. We have good numbers, good analytics, good key KPI or key performance indicators are going real well. So it's cool to talk to someone like that about these things too. like that's the next level, right? The wrestling mentors and business mentors, and they all kind of influence you in different ways, but it's cool to get that full circle.
Quite the modern day renaissance there, Mr. Heller.
Well, Bryan, you brought up kind of being in a new lane and also talking to other business owners, small business owners about kind of this avenue of things. And, you know, you've been at this full time, what, for
2 years.
2 years. Yeah, 2 years. How much has that changed, and how much as far as what you thought it was going to be, how you thought you were going to get it off the ground, and now you're kind of going to this where it's very wrestling like, right? You're getting the community behind you, you're building your community and letting your community, hey, be a part of this. It's very like the wrestling community, right? So how has that been for you, kind of changing your mindset, and how much have you evolved in this process and learned about yourself growing this business?
Yeah, a ton. You know, we joke around that there's a bunch. So Nick and I are like, you know, the two most active people in the business and the most active co-founders. We have a third co-founder as well that helped us get off the ground, and then we have a number of early partners too that were early investors that helped us get off the ground too. And the first meeting we had was kind of a discussion in Nick's club, and then we followed it up with a meeting at a local restaurant in Fairhaven called Tavallo. And Chris and I, the other co-founder, often reminisce to that point in time and say, like, if we knew then what we knew now, I don't know that we would have gone down this journey. You know, it was just, and I'm so grateful I did. It's kind of like in all things like that, though. If you're a high level wrestler and you're like, if I would have known on day one what kind of struggle I would have had to go through to get here, that would have been daunting at that time. But now in hindsight, you're like, I'd do it 10 times over. But again, in the beginning, you really don't know how much sacrificing, grind, and grit you need to be successful. And we were like, you know, all of us are successful in our own right. I was in consulting engineering for a long time. You know, the guy Chris is in marketing for a long time, a high level ad agency guy. And Nick, you know, built a successful wrestling club. And we knew how hard it was going to be to do this to some degree, but we all just said, yeah, we got this. We're going to just rock it out. And then going through it and building a software company has been, you know, a completely changing thing for me. Like just understanding technology at the level that I do now, which I didn't have a background in, has been transformative in its own right. But from a business standpoint, from the, you know, business relationship standpoint, to paid advertising, to you know, athlete levels, or athlete relationships and ambassadorships, and there's just so many moving parts to this all the time that I had no clue that it was going to be like this. And again, I wouldn't change it. It's so rewarding, and similar to coaching wrestling. It's like without the struggle, the reward wouldn't be so sweet. So, you know, having this platform out there and seeing the traction that we're gaining and seeing athletes on it and seeing us change athletes' lives is 100% worth it 100 times over. But when we were in it, I mean, you know, we kicked off development with what's called the Progressive Web App, which is basically a website that does app features. And that kicked off, I want to say, I'm trying to think it back. We started that in August of 19, I believe. So 2019, August. 2020, I believe. No. So it was before that. 2018, August. Jeez. 2018, August, we kicked off that project. And then in 2019, I think it was like June, we finally got that product that we could show people. So it was like almost a year just to get to that point. And then to realize that this wasn't the thing that we could go to market with. It wasn't complete enough. We could just do beta testing with some friends that like are some kids that we were coaching with. And then from there, we had to raise capital and then build a full team. And that was like in June of, I think 19, I said. And then so I guess that was, excuse me, I'm sorry. So it was August 19. And then June of 20, we got that off the ground. And then by November of 2020, we kicked in a full-time staff. So we had 3 full-time developers. I was full-time. We had a designer that was freelance who ended up becoming full-time. And then from November of 2020, we didn't even launch the product until June of 21. So now you're fast forwarding again 7 months of development with no user. Like, we can't show anyone anything. We got nothing for anyone, So like that whole process, and then launching that first one and immediately realizing that the platform was too confusing for people and we needed to switch it up and send it back to market. And then that was when we first started seeing traction. Like, all right, cool. Now we're seeing people stick with the app and stick with the program and learning the importance of how we're serving information. And then since then, we kicked off the paid subscriptions. So that was August of 21, V2 came out. And then April of this year, we just started collecting paid subscriptions, and we've been dripping it. Because again, we're just trying to figure out where our value is to our customer. And now we're at a point where we see that value and we're pushing it to the market a lot more. We're doing more media. So doing advertising, we're working with more ambassadors, and all of that is making it, grow at a much faster pace, which is cool. So we're at a cool place. But, if you, again, 2020, I was like talking to our dev team, our lead developers, we thought we were like a couple months out from launching the product. And it ended up being, a whole year before, 7 months, and then V2 is 2 months later, and now we're encroaching on a year before we got some traction, and then circle back another year, and now we're getting traction on the paid side. That's a journey, and again, I'm so psyched that we are where we are right now, and taking all that information and parlaying it forward so we can keep growing this business is super critical, and it's super exciting. But all that stuff is hard lessons learned along the way. So a little bit behind the curtain, but it's nothing worth having comes easy. Otherwise everyone would do it.
No, and honestly, it's been awesome to watch. It's even been cooler since you've been talking about making an app since 2008, and
yeah,
full circle and everything you got going on. So it's been great to see and kind of get an inside look and kind of tips where you might think certain things are a direct line, or people have like direct paths, right? And then kind of see how people adjust on the fly and when things are going on, or when you think you're gonna, you're 2 weeks away from the launch and then it's 7 months. Like, well, how do you react to that? How do you keep on going? How do you keep your mindset? It goes back to what our coaches always used to say: things you learn in this sport are going to stick with you and teach you lessons for the rest of your life. And that's how you move on, because, you had a rough loss at a certain point, and, you learn to put your shoes on the next day and make it happen. So again, dude, I think it's awesome watching it go down and what you and Nick got going on. And I also think too, Bryan, Mike Mal said something to me once where he said the sport of wrestling can be anything you want it to be. And you've seriously made it that. Like, you've made it that. You've made it where, well, obviously you're still doing your privates and you're still coaching, but you made, having the passion for coaching, and you put it into the app to help kids, turn it into your own thing. So kudos to you, man. That is, you're winning. Like, regardless, you're winning.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man. That grind, that's what Nick and I talk about all the time. Who's going to do it more than us? Who's going to grind harder than us? No one. We collectively remind each other of that every single day when we're grinding it out. And we talk about sleep, and I feel like a hypocrite. We just put a post out about sleep today that says Z's translate to W's, and then I'm up till 2 a.m. grinding, and then up at 6 a.m. So getting 4 hours of sleep is not enough, but it's like, that's what it takes. Sometimes you got to cut extra weight, and it's not the most beneficial thing, but you got to get the job done, and learning that. And you guys have that in you too, and you guys know, and that's what's cool, that you guys still are able to help people. And this podcast is another medium of doing that. You're kind of showcasing a lot of knowledge to people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it, which is amazing. And I'm so psyched that Rich is coaching high school wrestling again. I know, like, when we were months back on off air Google Meet talking about it, and I was so in support of you doing it. I'm like half jealous that you're the head coach of a high school team again. I miss it to some degree. Obviously, it just wasn't going to work out time wise for me, but it's awesome to see you back in the fold and being able to impact kids. So it's cool. We're all on the same type of journey. It's a good place to be.
Well, I appreciate that. And I always get after you about your sleep and stuff, but I do want you to know that your drive and determination and ability to grind is a motivation and inspiration. So I just want you to know that when I'm dragging my butt, I think of you, that
Appreciate
you're
it.
clocking into your second duties or whatever it may be. And when I'm going to bed at 11 o'clock, I know that you're still up for a few more hours. So yeah, you might not hear people tell you that, but I just want you to know that it does motivate me. So I appreciate you.
Cool, man. I appreciate you guys too. That's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I know my third visit on here. I think Rich said I might be the first third timer.
yo, that's a big thing, dude. Most people don't get there, dude. After 2, it's like, we're done with you. We don't need you anymore. But
I came on by request. I was like, hey, I'm in. Let's do it again.
you could be the third host. You could be the Airey Bros and Bryan Heller for all I care, dude. Because I know we
Tripod.
only, yeah, dude. Like, and I
Airey
don't.
Bros and Bro. That'd be the great
Yeah.
name right there.
No, you've always been a brother, Bryan. So anytime. And honestly, man, we need to catch up more often. I know we're all busy. Our hours don't meet up, but I hit Rich up today. Like, dude, I'm so stoked to talk to you and Bryan. I need you boys in my life. So I'm happy we got you on here, Mr. Heller. How do you brew your coffee, and how do you take it if you still drink coffee?
I do. I drink. All right. I drip it just like the old school machine, and we set it and forget it the night before, and I drink it black. So I take it straight. I'm drinking the Black Rifle Coffee Company, just black, just rolling with that hard right now. I was actually joking around that I think I'm up to 2 to 3 cups a day. And if you do the math, it's like 5 to 6 gallons a month, which is not ungodly. So people drink a lot more, but I like stats. So pulling it together and seeing that much coffee is frightening to me, but it is what it is.
If it makes you feel any better, I'm probably consuming more than you do right now.
Yeah. I hear that. You should do the gallon calculation, and then you're gonna go, shit, that's a lot of coffee.
Depends what day it is. If it's a school day, it's like through the roof. If it's like a normal day, it's like 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I got that. I'm on 2 basically every day, and sometimes a third.
Do you ever you always do the Black Rifle? You ever stop on the road and go? Do you have a favorite spot in the area?
I'm a sucker for Starbucks. I'll sometimes get the black coffee from Starbucks, and then I'll get some dessert drink, I'll call it. I'll admit it, as terrible as it sounds, chai tea latte with a shot of espresso. So dirty chai. I had one today. It's every once in a while I need that sweet pick me up. So I'm a sucker for a little Starbucks dirty chai.
That might lead into our last question, but before we get there, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Bryan Heller?
Oh man, I think it's just a reminder to grind every day. I don't think that my ritual is get up early and stay up late, which is not the best, but that's kind of my go-to. I also like the idea of a checklist, right? So making sure you check off the boxes and what you have to get done. And ultimately that's sort of what leads me to staying up late. And self-admittedly, I like to pile it on thicker. So I like a checklist that's too much for me to handle every day and let it carry over, as opposed to get done early. So I set a checklist and I grind it out all day.
Right. Respect. Checklists are very important.
Yeah, man.
You ever take a nap in the middle of the day?
I have weekend days, right? So I spend more time with my family on the weekend. That's kind of why I grind it out at night. I mean, my wife might say differently. I don't spend enough time with them at all, and I agree. It sucks. But sometimes on the weekend, I'll sneak a nap in. My wife's great, though. She'll let me sleep in some mornings on Saturday, too. If we have a puppy, that's crazy. She'll walk the dog and get my daughter up and kind of chill, and I can sleep in late, which is good. If I get too many crappy nights of sleep, and I'll say like when they start going south of 3 hours a couple nights in a row, I need like a couple big nights back to back to recover. But during the weekday, there's no time for naps. It's on to the grind. I mean, just grinding all day. I had a call that literally ended like 7 minutes before this. I was on with one of our partners for like an hour and a half. So it's always go. Not much nap time.
Right on. Are you what time are you usually waking up?
My first meeting, because we're global, so my lead developer's in Spain and the Canary Islands, so our meeting kicks off at 7 a.m. So I'm up sometime between 6:30. With the puppy, sometimes I get up early. This week I've been bad about it, but last week I was up at 5:30 a couple of mornings and did 2, 3, 4 mile walks with him, and then start at 7, grind till about 6, take a couple hour break, and then back at it sometime around 9.
All right. Well,
second shift.
Here's a little woo-woo pro tip for you, but it might help you a little bit with the lack of sleep. And since you're already up for sunrise, and I know it might be hard for you to get out for sunset, but if you can get out for sunrise and sunset and start getting a little bit of gazing in your life, it will help you sleep less.
All right, that's good to know. Yeah, I'm out for sunrise with the dog a bit, so there you go.
Even just being out there, like you don't even like all the people we talk to say just being out there is a game changer. So that might be something too. And you spent a lot of time on the beach too growing up, so that might be another thing. What are you listening to right now? Music wise, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Mostly music. But I'm all over the map. To be honest with you, now that I'm like reflecting on this, I haven't even listened to that much music lately, but there's been some, I throw the AirPods in. It's usually like, all right, I'm doing some dishes. I actually put music on when I get in the shower too, just kind of take a break. I've been on like a Neil Young kick lately. So that's been rolling pretty heavy. Some other music from that era too, but I actually brought back a little Dave Matthews Band, which is like, the early days stuff. There's a song called "The Stone" that I've liked since I was like 12 years old, and it's one of those songs that remind me of certain parts of my life, and hearing it kind of like resettles some things. So I've been listening to that, but a lot of Neil Young.
Right on.
Yeah, man.
So last but certainly not least, we've changed it up since the last time you've been on. We don't really dabble into the conspiracy world anymore. It's just not fun. So our new question to close it all out is, do you have a guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Yeah, man. I eat some candy. It's like I'm a nutrition guy, whatever, but my wife laughs. I'll throw a handful of Reese's Pieces into my down the gullet, or I've been known to attack a bag of Twizzlers. My wife will get like the big bag, and I'll put it down more than I'd like to admit. But that's definitely the guilty pleasure.
All right. If you had to pick one to be stranded on a deserted island, would you go Reese's Pieces or Twizzlers, or is there something else?
Oh man, one food and one candy.
One candy.
Yeah, one candy. I don't know. I don't crave it that hard. It would be definitely another food item if I had to pick a food item. Yeah. My food item would probably be my wife's turkey burgers. I could eat those 8 different ways. I chop them up, put them in burritos, and eat them different ways. So but candy, I don't know. It's whatever's in the cabinet. I tell my wife to stop buying it because if it's not there, I don't eat it. But when I open it, when I'm like, I know that's in there, I'll go. And if there's Twizzlers, I'll go grab them. If there's Reese's, I'll go grab them. So she's the one buying it. I'm a sucker for it.
So we grew up on Twizzlers too. I'm always fascinated when people say that Red Vines are better than Twizzlers.
Oh, they have no soul. You have no soul. Red Vines are trash.
What about the nips? Like the little nips, the little tiny ones.
The Twizzler ones or the Red Vine ones?
Twizzler nibs, I think they're called. They're like,
I'll go with those.
I'll like again, dude. I'm just like if it's there, I'll freaking eat it for no reason. I don't eat it. I'm not even that into it. It's just like I'm just a guilty sucker for it.
Well, I think it goes up to 2 as growing up as like wrestling nerds. You're also like, as a wrestling nerd, you're like a candy addict, right? Like you're like a hardcore. Like think about like the kids you grew up wrestling at the club. You all cut weight. You all had a list of what you were gonna eat on Saturday. You're all going to like eat like shit like on Saturday. It's just like part of the culture we grew up in, and like old habits die hard. And of course, candy was my first drug of choice.
Yeah, man. I know. I had an athlete that was a freshman in high school that was convinced that eating Skittles before the match was like a PED. Like he's like, oh, if I just eat a handful of Skittles, I'm like, I hate to break it to you, it does not work that way. I would recommend you don't do that. There's other ways to get some short burst energy that doesn't come from the candy coated
titanium oxide.
Yeah, titanium dioxide. Exactly. Titanium dioxide, no bueno.
Yeah, man. I blow the kid's mind when I show them that stuff. I'm like, don't eat that. It's got poison
in
it. You
Yeah.
eat that in Europe.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
In our day, what was it like? Red number 6 or something? Like kill your
Yellow
brother
number
or
5.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yellow
but
number
yellow
5 is a
number 5.
no-go. Yeah, you can't do that.
You're the
You're the
man,
man,
Bryan.
dog.
Great seeing
All
you,
right, guys.
dog. Have a
I
good
thought,
night.
Yeah, you
be
too.
well.
Yeah, you too.
Don't
Have a good
work too
night.
hard.
Ha, that's a joke. See you guys.
Later.